During our annual family trip, I was deliberately assigned the tiniest, noisiest room beside the laundry, unaware to them that I was actually the new secret owner of the luxury hotel they were staying in, a hidden inheritance from my grandfather that I had kept concealed. Choosing silence while I observed the same relatives who always dismissed me, oblivious to the fact that the very resort they flaunted in was mine. On our family excursion, I was assigned the most humble lodging. Unbeknownst to them, I was the hotel's proprietor. My choice was to remain silent and simply observe the yearly family gathering. This was a custom my mother staunchly preserved, yet for me, it invariably signified days filled with relentless critiques and pointed observations. This particular year promised little deviation, save for the fact that the opulent resort hosting us was now my possession, a confidential legacy from my grandfather, entrusted to me half a year beforehand. Upon entering Hotel Miramar's reception, my pulse quickened. I observed my sister, Lucia, the family's darling, being greeted with embraces and beaming faces from all sides. My presence went unremarked until my mother caught sight of me, her brow furrowing. "I imagined you wouldn't attend, Carmen," she stated, making no effort to conceal her displeasure. "I wouldn't forgo our family's annual assembly for any earthly thing," I responded, offering a smile that failed to convey any true warmth. My brother-in-law, Roberto, Lucia's husband, scanned me from head to toe, scrutinizing my attire as was his habit. "It seems your visual design enterprise isn't quite the moneymaker after all," he commented with a derisive grin. Little did they comprehend. My modest firm had blossomed into a prestigious agency serving global clientele. But I never felt compelled to rectify their misconceptions. The most poignant sting came from the truth I withheld. This exquisite, five-star establishment, complete with flawless grounds and sea vistas, was now my domain. My grandfather had always recognized a quality within me that the others in the family overlooked. "We shall assign the accommodations," my mother declared, as manager Miguel presented the room keys. My sister and her spouse were given the presidential suite, offering sea vistas. My parents received an executive suite, my cousins were granted deluxe quarters, and then there was me. "Carmen, your lodging will be room 108, on the ground level, adjacent to the laundry, the most compact and loudest space in the entire hotel." A flurry of looks passed among them. Some displayed discomfort, others barely concealed their entertainment. Miguel, the hotel's supervisor, appeared ill at ease. "Madam, we might explore an alternative arrangement for the young woman," he started. My mother, however, cut him off. "There's no need. Carmen is unpretentious. She requires no grand comforts." I observed Miguel's worried gaze upon me. He was aware of my true identity. Nevertheless, we had chosen to conceal my proprietorship throughout this family gathering. "It's perfectly acceptable, Miguel," I stated placidly. "Number 108 will be ideal." I accepted the key and proceeded towards the lift, sensing my family's gazes fixed on my retreating figure. As I walked, I overheard my cousin Daniela murmur, "Carmen always takes what's left behind." The chamber was precisely as I recalled, cramped, with a window facing the service zone and the persistent rumble of the laundry equipment. I settled onto the solitary bed and drew a deliberate breath. My purpose wasn't to challenge my relatives nor to humble them by disclosing my proprietorship. I was present to grasp the reason for their treatment. Why, after 3 decades, they persisted in regarding me as the least significant. That evening, at the hotel restaurant's welcoming meal, my kin commandeered the prime seating. My own chair remained somewhat obscured by a pillar. As everyone selected the menu's priciest offerings, I requested a modest green salad. "Is nothing more substantial within your means, Carmen?" my father inquired, a blend of derision and compassion in his tone. "We could cover your meal, if you wish. The salad suffices, truly." "Thank you," I answered, preserving my composure. The discussion, predictably, centered on Lucia's accomplishments, her recent advancement at the financial institution, her new dwelling in the upscale district. Our Lucia always had clear ambitions, my mother declared with pride. Unlike Carmen, who squandered her days with this artistic endeavor. The executive chef neared our table, intending to personally welcome the diners. Spotting me, he executed a slight bow, a gesture not missed by my family. "Was the greens dish to your satisfaction, Miss Carmen?" he inquired with deference. "Exquisite, Antonio." "Thank you," I responded. My family regarded me with peculiar expressions. "You're acquainted with the chef?" Lucia questioned, astonished. "Our paths have intersected previously," I stated evasively. In reality, I had personally engaged Antonio's services 3 months prior, subsequent to my grandfather's bequest of the hotel. As the evening wore on, and with each subsequent glass of wine, the remarks aimed at me grew sharper. The truth I guarded felt increasingly burdensome. Ought I to disclose the reality? What repercussions would there be if they comprehended that every slight, every degradation, transpired within my very own establishment. Miguel drew near with subtlety. Miss Carmen, a pressing issue demands your immediate consideration, he uttered softly. What pressing concern could Carmen possibly have? Roberto sneered. Did they deplete her supply of crayons? I rose unhurriedly, disregarding the barb. Pardon me. I shall return shortly. Within the secluded office, Miguel's expression was troubled. Madam, I cannot tolerate observing their conduct towards you any longer. You are the proprietor of this establishment. I understand, Miguel, but I must grasp a certain aspect before disclosing the facts. A familial rift has persisted for a considerable duration. I gazed out at the darkened ocean from the window and felt I was nearing the realization of why my family harbored such animosity towards me. I rejoined the table where my relatives were still savoring their lavish desserts. My cousin Javier was mid-tale about his new sports car acquisition when my Aunt Elena, ever the most perceptive, questioned me. What business did that staff member have with you, Carmen? Do you recognize him from elsewhere? I sensed every gaze settle upon me. Merely a mix-up regarding a booking, I responded nonchalantly, taking a drink of water. So typical of Carmen, Lucia muttered to Roberto, her voice sufficiently audible for me. Always creating difficulties. Later that evening, as everyone withdrew to their opulent chambers, I remained in the vacant reception area. Miguel arrived carrying a cup of tea. Your grandfather would hold immense pride in your actions, he murmured. Don Ernesto always recognized you as the ideal steward for his inheritance. I offered a wistful smile. My grandfather alone perceived a unique quality within me. At times, I questioned if his judgment had been flawed. Miguel emphatically disagreed. In the mere months you've overseen this establishment, you've introduced more enhancements than any prior proprietor. The personnel hold you in high regard. Don Ernesto's intuition was sound. The following morning, at the breakfast spread, I observed numerous employees offering me subtle, veiled deference. My family, preoccupied with piling their plates high with the most exquisite treats, failed to perceive this. Carmen, is that all you're consuming? My mother questioned, eyeing my modest plate of fruit and dairy. No wonder you're so slender. You appear unwell. I am in excellent health, mother, I responded. I merely favor commencing the day with lighter fare. Roberto erupted in laughter. Light? More accurately, thrifty. I'd wager you meticulously tally every single coin you disperse. His remark elicited chuckles around the table. I drew a deep breath and concentrated on my meal. This was not the opportune time for disclosures. The forenoon unfolded with various engagements, a guided tour of the premises, leisure time by the swimming pool, and spa treatments. Naturally, my parents had arranged matters such that Lucia and her spouse enjoyed the premier treatments, leaving only the remnants for me. My apologies, but regrettably, there are no available slots left for the exclusive massage, my mother conveyed with feigned regret. You'll need to accept the standard session. Subsequently, I ascertained she had intentionally canceled my booking for the superior therapy, asserting it would be squandered on Carmen. At luncheon, the discussion drifted to a particular subject, grandfather Ernesto's legacy. I shall never comprehend why father disposed of the hotel before his passing, my mother remarked, glancing about wistfully. It was his crowning achievement. He undoubtedly received an exceptionally tempting proposal, my father countered. What a pity we never learned the purchaser's identity. Lucia let out a theatrical sigh. If this establishment remained in our possession, we could reside here without charge. We could even allocate Carmen a respectable room, she appended, as though extending a special privilege. I stifled a grin. If only they comprehended the reality of the legacy and the familial enigma I was on the verge of uncovering. That very afternoon, while my parents and Lucia delighted in a yacht excursion, I discreetly entered my grandfather's former study, now my personal office. Miguel was awaiting me, holding a carton filled with papers. I located the items you requested, Miss Carmen, he stated, setting the carton upon the table. These comprise all your grandfather's private papers pertaining to your family. I commenced examining various letters, pictures, and journals. Among them, I discovered a faded envelope, bearing a date from a decade and a half prior. It held correspondence from my mother to my grandfather that utterly stunned me. Father, you must realize Carmen is not of our mold. She never has been. If you persist in favoring her, you will only cause her distress. She lacks the necessary qualities to thrive within this family. Lucia is the rightful recipient of the hotel's legacy, one day. My hands trembled. I proceeded to read comparable exchanges spanning several years. Correspondence in which my own mother endeavored to persuade my grandfather that I was unworthy of his regard or his legacy. Letters detailing my alleged shortcomings and vulnerabilities. A handwritten memorandum from my grandfather, never dispatched, stated, Isabel, it grieves me to witness your treatment of your own child. Carmen possesses a vitality and intellect that eludes your perception. Eventually, all of you will acknowledge your error. This revelation struck me like an icy shock. It transcended mere jealousy or familial competition. My very own mother had methodically engineered my exclusion within our kin. "Are you well, madam?" Miguel inquired, perturbed by my quietude. "No," I answered candidly, "but I shall recover." I proceeded with my reading and uncovered an even more unsettling truth. My father and Roberto had attempted to coerce my grandfather into divesting the hotel to them at a diminished value, moments before his demise. Their scheme had faltered when my grandfather, wary of their motives, opted to covertly bequeath it to me. A tap on the entrance disrupted my inquiry. It was Dianela, my cousin. "Carmen, what is your purpose here?" "This section is restricted to authorized individuals," she stated, casting a curious eye over the papers strewn across the desk. Miguel swiftly interceded. "The young lady was simply seeking particulars regarding the hotel's operations, Miss Dianela." Dianela appeared unconvinced. Her eyes narrowed as she scrutinized the chamber. "Is it not peculiar that they permit you access to a private office? They wouldn't even grant us a glimpse." "Perhaps I am not as inconsequential as everyone perceives," I countered, maintaining eye contact. A subtle shift occurred in her demeanor. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty registered in her gaze. "You were invariably grandfather's preferred grandchild," she articulated deliberately. We all acknowledged it, though none would confess. Once Dianela departed, I realized my covert status would soon unravel. The family would begin to harbor suspicions, and I would be compelled to make a choice: persist in suffering indignities, or disclose that I, the scorned Carmen, now held proprietorship over the dominion they all yearned for. That evening, during the ceremonial dinner, the tempest that had gathered since my appearance finally erupted, bringing with it the chance for retribution I hadn't realized I desired. The grand banquet served as the focal point of our family's assembly. The hotel's primary reception room had been adorned with vibrant blossoms, flickering candles, delicate crystalware, and crisp linen coverings. I made a conscious decision to arrive tardily, clad in an understated yet refined black gown, a creation of my own design. "At last, you grace us with your presence," my mother remarked with vexation. "We were on the verge of ordering without you." I occupied the position they had designated for me, once more, the least advantageous seat at the gathering. Roberto, already somewhat inebriated, was boasting about his recent property acquisitions. "I secured 3 coastal properties last month," he vaunted. "If I manage my affairs astutely, I might even procure a hotel of this caliber eventually." Lucia beamed with pride. "My husband possesses entrepreneurial foresight. Unlike certain other relatives who are satisfied with creating emblems, my father then raised his goblet to Roberto and Lucia, proclaiming them the genuine distinction of this lineage." Everyone raised their drinks, while my own remained untouched on the tabletop. No one appeared to observe this during the initial course. Dianela, however, was scrutinizing me intently. Eventually she uttered, "Carmen, I witnessed you in the hotel's secluded office today. You appeared quite at ease there." An abrupt quiet descended upon the table. Every gaze shifted to me. "What were you doing in a prohibited zone?" my father demanded, his brow furrowed. I sipped from my glass of water. "I was delving into certain matters concerning the establishment." "Why would you engage in such an activity?" my mother queried. "It's hardly as though you're in a position to acquire one." Roberto emitted a booming laugh. "Carmen possessing a hotel? That notion is truly amusing. She cannot even procure a respectable chamber." At that very instant, Miguel approached our table, bearing a bottle of exceptional champagne. "Miss Carmen, the effervescent wine you arranged for your kin," he announced. My mother blinked, perplexed. "We place no such order." "It's a gift," he clarified. "From me?" I interjected placidly. "From you?" Lucia nearly gasped for air. "How could you possibly finance a bottle that likely exceeds your entire monthly dwelling expense?" Miguel poured the sparkling wine while I preserved my equanimity. The palpable strain permeated the dining area. "There is much about me that remains unknown to you all," I stated plainly. My father regarded me with suspicion. "What are you implying, Carmen? If you possess something to articulate, then express it clearly." I weighed my alternatives. I could divulge my secret at this moment. Bring them low, just as they had abased me for years. Vengeance would be presented on a platter. Yet, as I studied their countenances, a shift occurred within me. I harbored no desire to emulate them. "I merely wish to offer a benevolent act," I responded, "to commemorate our collective presence as a family, notwithstanding all circumstances." The astonishment on their countenances was unmistakable. They had not anticipated such magnanimity from me, given their prior treatment. The meal proceeded, but a subtle alteration had taken place. Daniela regarded me with curiosity, as if re-evaluating my true identity. While enjoying dessert, Lucia initiated a discussion concerning my grandfather's legacy. I never grasped why grandfather covertly divested the hotel. It was our ancestral property. Perhaps because he anticipated some would endeavor to exploit it, I responded, fixing my gaze upon my father and Roberto. What are you implying? Roberto instantly became defensive. Nothing, I stated serenely. Merely that grandfather possessed greater sagacity than anyone presumed. My father regarded me with a blend of distrust and apprehension. Carmen, if you possess any knowledge regarding the hotel's transaction, you ought to divulge it to the family. Now I am considered part of the family? I queried. How peculiar. Only hours passed, I was the impoverished relation deemed unworthy of even a passable room. An uneasy quietude settled over the dining area. My mother attempted to steer the conversation, but I persisted. You know, grandfather imparted a great deal to me. I spent countless hours with him while you all were occupied with your significant existence. He confided in me his visions for the hotel, his aspirations for its enduring heritage. And what exactly did he communicate? Lucia inquired, unable to suppress her inquisitiveness. He shared that a family enterprise mirrors its proprietor's values. I paused meaningfully, and that one must always exercise caution regarding misleading facades. Roberto struck his fist upon the table. Enough with the cryptic pronouncements. If you have something to articulate, then express it plainly. Precisely then, the hotel's overall manager advanced towards our table. Pardon the intrusion. I merely wished to ascertain that all was to your contentment, especially for you, Miss Carmen. My family noted with unease the favorable consideration I was being afforded. All is splendid, Javier. My thanks, I responded with a faint smile. Why in heaven's name do they treat you as though you're a person of significance? My father insisted on knowing. I drew a profound breath. I had not intended to disclose my secret that evening, but the circumstances were intensifying. A choice had to be made. Because they recognize my endeavors, I answered. They simply hold esteem for my craft. Creating insignias, Roberto scoffed. I conceptualize corporate identities for global enterprises, I clarified. My firm boasts clientele across 3 continents and 30 individuals. Last fiscal year, our earnings surpassed $3 million. Their faces instantly registered astonishment. My mother nearly let her glass slip. You're fabricating this, Lucia charged. If you truly were that prosperous, you would have boasted relentlessly. Unlike certain individuals, I do not require perpetual affirmation from others, I rejoined. And there exists a distinct separation between modesty and permitting oneself to be regarded as refuse. If you are so accomplished, why did you consent to lodging in that dreadful chamber? My mother questioned, genuinely bewildered. Because I wished to witness the extent of your actions, I responded truthfully. I sought to ascertain if any boundary existed to the disdain you harbored for me. My pronouncements landed like heavy stones upon the table. For the first occasion, I perceived mortification on some of their countenances. Not every one, but it constituted a beginning. Carmen, my father commenced, yet I interjected. I have not concluded, I stated resolutely. For long years, I tolerated your remarks, your compassionate gazes, your unceasing scorn. All because I diverged from the course you deemed suitable. Because I opted to construct rather than demolish, to cultivate instead of contrive. My hands trembled, yet my voice held firm. It was as though decades of quietude had at last discovered expression. Grandfather instilled in me that an individual's worth resides not in their possessions or the facades they uphold, but in their conduct towards fellow beings. He discerned a quality within me that remained invisible to you, preoccupied as you were with aligning me with your preconceived notions of achievement. The ensuing quiet was absolute. I observed emotions traversing their countenances, disbelief, mortification, bewilderment, and in some instances, the dawn of an uneasy comprehension. If this holds true, my father eventually uttered, why did you never articulate it? Would you have genuinely heeded me? I queried. Or would you have contrived another method to diminish my accomplishments? He offered no response. We all understood the reality. The meal concluded in an awkward stillness. As the others withdrew, Daniela lingered and settled beside me. I always perceived you as distinct, she murmured softly. Grandfather often advised me to observe you, to glean from your example. I never grasped the reason until this moment. Our gazes converged in an instant of shared comprehension. Carmen, she persisted, there is more to this, is there not? Something concerning this hotel and grandfather that you have yet to divulge. I nodded slowly. And tomorrow, everyone shall be informed. The following morning broke with an uncommon luminescence. From my unassuming chamber beside the laundry, I discerned the rhythmic drone of machinery commingling with the chorus of birds. I attired myself meticulously, selecting an ivory bespoke suit I customarily reserved for momentous events. This day would assuredly prove an occasion none of us would ever erase from memory. At breakfast, the underlying dynamics had subtly shifted. My family observed me with a blend of perplexity and inquisitiveness. The taunting had ceased, supplanted by an uneasy quietude and furtive glances. My disclosure the previous night had destabilized the very core of the family's established order. Yet, they remained ignorant of the complete reality. My mother was the initial one to attempt interaction. "Carmen, darling, we were unaware your enterprise was thriving to such an extent," she stated with a strained smile. "You ought to have informed us." "I did try, Mother." My voice remained placid, devoid of any acrimony. "For years, each time I alluded to a new client or significant undertaking, you diverted the conversation to highlight Lucia's triumphs." My sister, to her credit, exhibited a flush of color. "Well, the crucial point is that we are now aware," my father interjected, employing a conciliatory tone he had never previously directed at me. "We are, naturally, proud of you." Roberto, nevertheless, clung to his skepticism. "3 million in yearly earnings. That's commendable, assuming its veracity," he remarked, accentuating the latter phrase. "Though revenue is not synonymous with net gain, naturally." "My net profit margin last year stood at 28%, I responded unflustered. "After taxation." His countenance then shifted into a blend of astonishment and something closely resembling deference. At 10 o'clock, Miguel drew near our table. "Miss Carmen, all preparations are complete for the assembly you scheduled." My family regarded me with peculiar expressions. I arranged a brief overview of the hotel's heritage. I elucidated, rising to my feet. "I presumed it would be of interest to you, given its significance to grandfather." We proceeded to the principal conference chamber, an exquisite area boasting expansive windows that provided sweeping views of the ocean. Within, to my astonishment, I found not only the hotel's executive staff but also an elder, distinguished gentleman whom I instantly recognized, Arturo Mendez, my grandfather's attorney. "What is the meaning of this, Carmen?" my father inquired, suddenly perturbed. "Kindly be seated," I gestured, indicating the foremost row of chairs. Once all had taken their places, I positioned myself before them. My pulse quickened, yet my tone held firm. "I appreciate your presence here today. As you are aware, this hotel represented the paramount achievement among grandfather Ernesto's ventures. He constructed it from its inception, transforming a humble inn into one of the most esteemed establishments along the coastline." I engaged the projector, displaying vintage photographs of the hotel in its nascent stages. My family observed with a blend of sentimentality and bewilderment. "What you might not be aware of," I proceeded, "is the true fate of this hotel following his passing." My mother visibly stiffened. "Grandfather divested the hotel before he died. We never ascertained the buyer's identity." "That account is not wholly precise," Attorney Mendez interjected, standing alongside me. "Don Ernesto did not sell the hotel. He conveyed it into a legal trust." "A trust?" my father echoed, a frown on his face. "Why were we not apprised?" "Because it held no relevance to you," Mendez responded with professional detachment. "The trust designated but one recipient." Every gaze pivoted towards me. I witnessed the fragments of understanding aligning in their thoughts. "It's impossible," Lucia murmured. I gave a slow nod. "Grandfather bequeathed the hotel to me. I have been its proprietor for half a year." The subsequent quiet was profound, as if even the very atmosphere had stilled. Their countenances evinced a spectrum of feelings, from utter disbelief to outright indignation, moving through the most profound astonishment. Roberto was the first to regain his composure. "This is preposterous. Why would he leave it to you? Specifically, you, his most cherished asset?" "That is a most pertinent inquiry," I responded, directing my gaze at my parents. "And I believe Mother might possess some insight." My mother blanched instantaneously. "I have no idea what you're referring to." "I discovered your correspondence, Mother. The letters you penned to grandfather, endeavoring to persuade him that I was unworthy of his regard or his legacy." Several sharp intakes of breath resonated in the room. My mother appeared to shrivel in her seat. "I also uncovered something further," I continued, gesturing to Miguel, who distributed a folder to each family member. "The papers corroborated that father and Roberto had attempted to coerce my grandfather into divesting the hotel to them at a diminished rate, moments before his demise." My father opened his folder with quivering hands. Within lay duplicates of electronic messages, deceptive acquisition offers, and fabricated assessments that undervalued the hotel's true worth. This is misrepresented," he stuttered. "No, it is not." Attorney Mendez interceded. "Don Ernesto presented these documents to me himself. It was then he resolved to amend his testament and bestow the hotel in trust upon Carmen, the sole individual he genuinely believed capable of upholding his heritage." Roberto rose suddenly, his countenance flushed with fury. This is a fabrication. You undoubtedly coerced the elderly man, or perhaps the attorney. You lack the requisite capability to manage an enterprise of this magnitude. The outcomes indicate otherwise, I responded placidly. In the 6 months since I assumed command, the hotel's earnings have grown by 18%. Guest contentment has notably risen, and we have received nominations for 2 distinguished hospitality accolades. Miguel affirmed, with a nod. The assembled management personnel displayed expressions of legitimate pride and reverence. My mother appeared truly bewildered. If you are indeed the proprietor, why did you agree to inhabit that dreadful room? Why did you permit us to behave towards you in such a manner? That was the very inquiry I had anticipated. Because I needed to understand, I responded, my voice finally tinged with emotion. I needed to grasp if you truly perceived me as valueless, or if a more profound rationale underlay your scorn. Tears welled, yet I maintained my composure. And what I unearthed proved even more agonizing than I had conceived. It wasn't that you thought I lacked worth. It was that you dreaded the implications if others recognized my true value, particularly grandfather. My mother averted her eyes, unable to meet mine. The correspondence clearly illustrates, Mother, that you could not tolerate my grandfather's affection for me. You could not reconcile with him perceiving a distinct quality in me.
Why?
What action of mine merited this? The subsequent silence was pierced by a suppressed sob. It was my mother, who appeared to crumple beneath the burden of decades of hidden truths. You mirrored him precisely, she finally whispered. You possess the identical countenance, the same worldview. When you were a child, he would often declare you his spitting image, imbued with his pioneering drive. She paused, breathing unsteadily. And I consistently fell short of his expectations. I was never sufficiently clever, adequately driven. When you emerged with your inventive spirit and resolve, I witnessed his eyes illuminate when conversing with you, a spark never present when he spoke with me. The disclosure detonated like an explosive in the chamber. Decades of bitterness, of maternal envy, of a rivalry I had been utterly unaware of. So you resolved to guarantee I never distinguish myself, I concluded, experiencing a blend of comprehension and sorrow. You persuaded the entire family that I was inferior, that my aspirations held no merit. My mother offered no rebuttal. She was incapable. And you? I then addressed my father. You perceived a commercial advantage. If I remained ostracized from the family, I would pose no impediment to your designs concerning the hotel. My father appeared to have gained a decade in age within mere minutes. Lucia, for her part, stayed quiet, evidently assimilating all she had just uncovered about our family's intricate workings. It was at that point that I made the most pivotal decision. Despite all that has transpired, I stated ultimately, piercing the heavy quiet that had settled over the room, I remain a member of this family. My words seemed to suspend in the atmosphere, unforeseen and unsettling to all present. We are not gathered here for a reckoning, I pressed on. I could have disgraced you from the outset, evicted you from this establishment, or subjected you to the same treatment you afforded me. However, that would only sustain the pattern of animosity that has tainted this family for an excessive duration. My mother regarded me with reddened eyes, her face a combination of mortification and astonishment. When my grandfather entrusted me with this hotel, I didn't fully grasp his motives. Now I comprehend it transcended mere commerce. It was about affording us an opportunity for mending. I moved towards the expansive window that commanded the room, gazing at the ocean unfolding before us. The identical sea my grandfather observed each morning from his study. Grandfather deposited something additional within the trust, I declared, facing them. A letter designated for the family's reception 6 months after my assumption of the hotel. That occasion is today. Attorney Mendez nodded and retrieved an envelope from his satchel. He presented it to me with gravity. This represents Don Ernesto's final desire, separate from legal stipulations, Mendez clarified. He expressly stipulated it be read before all family members. My hands quivered slightly as I unsealed the envelope. I withdrew the sheets inscribed in my grandfather's distinct penmanship and commenced reading aloud. Beloved family, if these words reach your ears, it signifies that Carmen has embraced her duty as proprietor of Hotel Miramar. And the moment has arrived for you to understand my authentic motivations. This establishment embodies my heritage. Yet a heritage extends beyond mere structures and commerce. It also encompasses the principles we impart to succeeding generations. For years, I observed with sorrow as our family fractured. I witnessed the disdain directed at Carmen, the very individual who, with poignant irony, most mirrors me in essence and outlook. Isabel, my cherished daughter, invariably sought to demonstrate her value to me by vying with her own offspring. It was unneeded. I loved her for her inherent self, not for the persona she felt compelled to adopt to impress me. Roberto and Lucia constructed their existence upon outward show and shallow aspirations. Genuine accomplishment is not quantified by holdings or standing, but by the probity with which we conduct our lives. I bequeathed the hotel to Carmen, not solely due to my confidence in her administrative capabilities, but because I believe her heart possesses the capacity to mend our family's divisions. My ultimate desire is for you to employ this disclosure as a moment for contemplation, to admit previous missteps and forge a future where reciprocal esteem supplants disdain, where familial affection outweighs personal aspirations. The hotel, while legally Carmen's, spiritually belongs to each of you, should you choose to cultivate a fresh family interaction founded on reverence and acceptance. With everlasting love, Ernesto. As I concluded reading, numerous individuals in the room, including the hotel personnel, had tears glistening in their eyes. The ensuing quiet was imbued with feeling, with understanding, with realities suppressed for far too long. My mother was the initial one to speak. All this while, she whispered, all this while, contending with my own child, striving to validate myself to a father who already held me dear. She rose slowly and, to my astonishment, advanced towards me, her voice fractured by sentiment. Carmen, I am uncertain if you can ever pardon me. I was an abysmal mother, blinded by my personal misgivings. I perceived in her gaze something entirely novel, authentic acknowledgement, profound susceptibility, and the genesis of sincere remorse. My father, meanwhile, appeared utterly crushed. Your grandfather's assessment was accurate, he conceded, almost to himself. I constructed my entire existence striving to impress others, losing sight of what truly held significance. Lucia, for her part, remained quiet, seemingly absorbing all she had just learned about our family's interactions. Eventually, she rose and approached me. I never comprehended why grandfather favored you, she articulated softly. Now I discern it clearly. While I pursued his affirmation, you pursued his enlightenment. While I coveted his wealth, you desired his heritage. No animosity resided in her tone, merely a sorrowful resignation. Roberto, conversely, appeared unaffected. He rose abruptly, his countenance flushed with outrage. And I presume now we are to feel remorseful and expected to commend you for inheriting a dominion you did not construct. He glanced at Lucia, anticipating her endorsement. But she remained standing beside me. Roberto, I stated calmly, the hotel is legally my property. That fact will not alter, but our collective future as a family from this point onward rests upon all of us. Attorney Mendez subtly cleared his throat. In fact, there exists an additional stipulation we have yet to address. We all pivoted towards him, taken aback. Don Ernesto decreed that at Carmen's sole discretion, she possessed the authority to allocate minor shares in the hotel to other relatives, provided they exhibited dedication to the principles he championed. This disclosure landed like an explosive. My family now regarded me with a blend of anticipation and apprehension. I am not soliciting subservience in return for equities, I elucidated. What grandfather desired was authentic rapprochement, not driven by financial gain. What then do you put forward? My father inquired, his tone implying a genuine willingness to heed. I drew a profound breath. This was the precise juncture I had awaited. The chance to transmute suffering into something valuable and formative. I suggest we confront the reality. We are a disunited family that has inflicted genuine injury upon its constituents. We cannot obliterate history, but we can dictate the course of our tomorrow. I paused, meeting each person's gaze. The hotel will persist under my management, but I am amenable to establishing a family advisory board where every voice is heard. Not for day-to-day operations, but to guarantee grandfather's heritage persists in charitable endeavors, in community support, in the ideals he championed. And the shares? Roberto questioned, his skepticism lingering. They will be accrued through dedication over time, I stated with conviction. Not through adulation directed at me, but through conduct that genuinely reflects your comprehension of grandfather's testament. My mother came forward and, with a degree of hesitation, clasped my hands. I am unworthy of another opportunity, she uttered, tears streaming down her face. But if you are inclined to grant me one, I pledge to exert every effort to be the mother I ought to have been from the very start. I felt my own teardrops welling. Years of yearning for the maternal affection I had been denied coalesced in that shared instant of candidness. That is all I ever desired, mother, I responded gently. My father then joined us, with Lucia following suit. Roberto, however, kept his distance, surveying the unfolding events with a mix of bewilderment and bitterness. I require time to absorb all of this, he stated eventually, moving towards the exit. Take as much time as you require, I answered. The door shall remain accessible when you are prepared. Once Roberto departed, the ambience in the chamber transformed. It felt as though an unseen burden had been released, permitting us to respire unhindered for the first time in numerous decades. The hotel employees, who had observed the entire occurrence, appeared profoundly affected. Miguel subtly signaled for them to withdraw, granting us this private family interval. When only we and Attorney Mendez remained, Lucia spoke. What course of action do we take now? How do we commence mending such extensive harm? Through sincerity, I answered. Grandfather often stated that familial injuries only mend when brought into the open. We have preserved this animosity in obscurity for an excessive period. My father inclined his head slowly. You possess his sagacity, Carmen. You always have. Mendez rose, gathering his brief. My task here is complete. Don Ernesto would be proud of your comportment in this matter, Carmen. As he made for the exit, he appended, incidentally, an additional carton of your grandfather's private papers resides in my office. He indicated you would find particular fascination in his journals from the period he erected the hotel. After Mendez departed, my family and I lingered in the chamber, enshrouded in a stillness that, for the first time, was not uneasy but reflective. I never inquired about your enterprise, my mother suddenly stated. 3 million in earnings, 30 staff members. You must possess considerable aptitude for your profession. I offered a faint smile. I do, and I would be delighted to showcase my work to you one day. I would appreciate that, she responded with an earnestness I had never detected in her voice prior. Lucia, ever the pragmatist, interjected. So, what transpires with the remainder of our family weekend? Shall we proceed with the scheduled engagements? I mused for an instant. I believe so, but with certain adjustments. To begin, I shall relocate to the suite appropriate for my standing as proprietor. And what action do we take regarding Roberto? My father inquired. We shall afford him room, I answered. Some individuals require greater duration than others to accept reality. That evening, as the staff conveyed my possessions to the hotel's principal suite, I experienced an unusual blend of sentiments. Triumph, indeed, yet not the trivial vindication of revenge, but the more profound victory of having severed a pernicious pattern. From my opulent terrace, I gazed upon the identical ocean my grandfather cherished. The briny breeze brushed my countenance, carrying with it the scent of fresh prospects. You are correct, grandfather, I whispered to the currents. Authentic strength lies not in demeaning those who have wronged us, but in extending to them the chance for transformation. In that instant, I recalled my grandfather's recurring wisdom. A hotel resembles a family, Carmen. Each accommodation varies. Each patron brings a unique narrative. The key is ensuring everyone perceives their worth, not in spite of their distinctions, but precisely because of them. For the first occasion in my existence, I sensed our family now possessed the potential to evolve into the type of establishment my grandfather had imagined, a locale where every individual could discover their niche, without forfeiting the sensation of inclusion within the greater entity. The journey ahead would be protracted and, most likely, arduous. Certain scars would require years for complete alleviation, if indeed they ever fully mended. However, we had taken the initial stride, perhaps the most crucial one. We had confronted reality directly and chosen not to avert our gaze. Epilogue. A year has elapsed since that enlightening family assembly. Hotel Miramar flourishes under my superintendence, with alterations my grandfather would have sanctioned, a scholarship initiative for local youth, accommodations modified for individuals with special needs, and an unwavering dedication to ecological responsibility. My association with my family has progressed in manners I never conceived achievable. My mother and I now share a weekly midday meal, gradually reconstructing our connection. She no longer aims to contend with me, but genuinely desires to comprehend me. At times, during our discussions of aesthetics or commerce, I perceive a flicker of authentic maternal pride in her gaze. Lucia proved the most astonishing. After deep contemplation of her existence and principles, she resolved to re-enroll in academia to pursue social work. I aspire to construct something substantial through my own efforts, she conveyed. Her metamorphosis has been significant and heartfelt. My father discovered an unforeseen mission within the hotel's outreach initiative, where he now organizes undertakings for burgeoning entrepreneurs. He states that imparting his accumulated knowledge, encompassing his errors, grants him a meaning that wealth and standing never delivered. Roberto required half a year to address me once more. When he eventually did, it was to inquire about an employment prospect, not a gratis share. He currently directs the hotel's growth division, where his drive, appropriately directed, is demonstrating its worth. Chamber 108, where they lodged me on that initial day, has been converted into a compact exhibit chronicling the history of the hotel and its originator. At the conclusion of the guided visit, guests discover grandfather's correspondence, elegantly framed as a reminder that familial enterprises are fundamentally about principles and heritage. Each day, as I traverse the passageways of this hotel, which embodies both my patrimony and my duty, I sense my grandfather's guiding presence. I opted to disclose my secret not for vindictive purposes, but for the prospect of reconciliation it presented. And while the journey has not been facile, the family we are presently forging is more robust and genuine than the one we merely feigned. As the emblem at the hotel's entrance proclaims, we construct no barriers, but connections. We extend not mere lodging, but true residences. That constitutes the authentic essence of Hotel Miramar and the most precious inheritance my grandfather bestowed upon me. Some narratives transcend simple tales. They serve as reflections of existence. If this one resonated with you, assist us in continuing to share others that also merit attention. Consider becoming a patron. Unite with us. My sincere gratitude, and may your day be splendid.